Hello, dear aspirants. This is Shazib Tandu. I am currently serving in the Provincial Civil Services of Sindh Province. I have done my Masters in Political Science from Punjab University, Lahore. I qualified the Combined Competitive Examinations 2019 conducted by Sindh Public Service Commission and was allocated to the post of Mukhtiarkar. I have a decade-long experience of teaching various compulsory and optional subjects for CSS and PMS. This is one of my lectures on gender studies, and its famous topic is women in development. And we will discuss the topic in detail in this lecture. So, outlining the WID approach and gender studies, we shall discuss the concept of WID approach and the origin of women in development approach. And thirdly, we will discuss the proponents of WID approach. And then we will discuss the importance of WID approach, theoretical basis of WID approach, and institutional basis of WID approach, the institutions which support the WID, women in development, the perspective and approach. And finally, we'll discuss the critiques and evaluation of the women in development approach. So, beginning with the concept and definition of the women in development approach, the women in development perspective emphasizes the importance of integrating women into development programs, number one. And secondly, it recognizes their contributions to economic growth. So, this concept basically highlights the need to include women in development programs of a country, that without the active participation of women, the country cannot make an economic progress and development in the Committee of Nations. Now, discussing the emergence of WID approach and gender studies, the global feminist movements of 1960s and 70s played a crucial role in highlighting the gender inequalities, and they brought attentions to the gender inequality and helped push for change. These movements made people aware of issues women faced and pushed for their rights. As a result, they played a key role in advancing gender equality and improving the lives of women globally. Especially the movements, the second wave feminism was crucial in this regard. So, discussing the proponents of women in development approach, we begin with the Esther Bostrup. She was a Danish economist, often credited with laying the groundwork for the WID approach. Bostrup's seminal work, Women's Role in Economic Development, she wrote this book in 1970, highlighted the critical and important role of women that women can play in agriculture and economy. She argued that development policies often fail to consider women's role, leading to the adverse effects on women's participation in development. And the second is Anne Whitehood, a feminist economist. Whitehood was instrumental in critiquing the development policies that did not account for gender differences. Her work highlighted how economic policies could reinforce gender inequalities if they did not specifically, address the women's needs and roles in the development of a nation. So her work was very much important in promoting the women participation in development of a country. And now we shall discuss the importance of women in development approach in detail in the subsequent headings. We begin with the first importance, that is focus on economic integration. The women in development approach emphasizes the need to incorporate women into economy as a mean to enhance development. It argues that women's productive roles should be recognized and valued within economic planning. For example, programs aimed at increasing women's access to credit, such as microfinance initiatives, are an example. And these initiatives, implemented in Bangladesh and other countries, remarkably succeeded. The second, recognition of women's productive, roles. So, in this perspective, the women in development approach challenges the traditional view that only men are the primary breadwinners. It highlights especially the women's role in agriculture, trade, and other economic activities that are often overlooked. For example, the agricultural extension services that specifically target female farmers, providing them with training and resources, reflect the WID approach by acknowledging and supporting women's economic contributions. The third importance of WID is the focus on equity and efficiency, not equality, just equity. That's very important. Women in development posits that the gender equity and equality is not only a matter of social justice, but also crucial for development and efficiency. By ensuring women have equal access to resources, education, and opportunities, development projects are more likely to succeed. So, education programs that promote girls' education are a direct applications of WID approach. And another important importance of the women in development approach is the welfare approach. Initially, WID was closely tied to welfare programs that aimed to meet women's practical needs, exemplary gratia, health, and nutrition, without challenging existing social structures. However, this was later criticized for not addressing the underlying causes of gender inequality. For example, the nutrition programs that focus on maternal and child health, while important, were often critiqued for treating women primarily as an agent. And another important feature of the WID is the critique of gender blind policies. The WID criticizes traditional development policies that ignore gender differences and fail to address the specific needs and roles of women. It advocates for gender sensitive approaches in policy making and implementation. For example, the shift from general agriculture policies to those that specifically include women farmers demonstrates a move towards gender sensitivity planning, which is a core WID principle. And another important feature of the WID is advocacy for policy reforms. WID calls for change in laws and policies that discriminate against women or fail to protect their rights. This includes advocating for equal rights in areas such as property ownership, education, and employment. For example, legal reforms that grant women equal rights to inherit land and property are in line with WID's advocacy for removing legal barriers to women's full and active participation in the development of a country. And another feature and importance, the focus on women-specific projects. The WID often led to the creation of women-specific projects within broader development programs. These projects aim to directly address the needs and concerns of women, though they sometimes segregating women's issues from mainstream development program. You can quote the example of women's cooperatives that focus on skill development. And here we are going to discuss the theoretical basis of WID approach, the theories which support the women in development approach in different ways. We shall discuss the liberal feminism, that is, the women in development is heavily influenced by liberal feminist thought that is started in the first wave feminism and the second wave feminism, which advocates for equal rights and opportunities for women. And liberal feminists argue that women should have the same access to resources, education, and employment as men. And this approach demands the equality and full participation of women in the development of a country. The second theory that supports the WID approach is the human capital theory. So human capital theory is very important, and it has a wide applications when it comes to discussing the WID approach. And this theory underpinning WID is which views education and training as instruments that increase individuals' productivity and economic value. So its main focus is the educational betterment and educational advancement of women. And the third important theory, that is modernization theory. And this is very important when it comes to discussing the women in development approach. So this is the Western theory. The women in development is also linked to modernization theory, which suggests that economic development and modernizations will naturally lead to social progress and including gender equality. And this theory talks about the backwardness of women in the patriarchal societies especially. And now we shall discuss the institutional basis of women in development approach. In this chapter, we shall discuss the institutions that support WID, the global feminist movement in global south. The global south are generally the developing countries of southern hemisphere. The global feminist movements, the rise of feminist movements in 1960s and 70s, particularly in the global north, played a significant role in bringing attention to gender inequalities, and these movements influenced international organizations and programs to recognize women's issues in development. So basically, global south are developed and global north are developing countries. Another institutional base is the UN initiatives. The United Nations organization played a crucial role in institutionalizing the women in development approach. The UN Decade for Women, which was celebrated in 1976 to 1985, was pivotal in integrating gender into development agendas. The establishment of UN Commission on the Status of Women and the adoption of Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against the Women, these were the remarkable initiatives of the UN. And then we discussed the World Bank and other development agencies. The international development agencies like the World Bank began to adopt women in development policies in 1970s and 1980s, and these institutions started incorporating gender considerations into their development projects, often focusing on women's participation in the economy, education, and the health sphere of the development of a nation. And academic foundation is also helpful in promoting the WID concept, the Women in Development approach. So WID approach is also grounded in academic scholarship that critiques traditional development theories for ignoring gender especially. The scholars in gender studies began to highlight the differential impacts of development policies on men and women, advocating for more inclusive approaches to address women's specific issues. And then comes to the non-government organizations. They have also a crucial role in supporting and promoting the Women in Development approach. The non-governmental organizations played a crucial role in advancing the WID approach by implementing gender-sensitive development programs and advocating for women's rights. And these organizations often worked in partnership with international institutions and governments to promote gender equality in development with regard to women in developing countries. And now we shall discuss the critiques and evaluation of women in development approach. There is a much criticism on this, approach of women participation and development, focusing too much on integrating women into existing developmental frameworks without challenging the underlying power structures that perpetuates gender inequality. Secondly, the WID led to the emergence of more comprehensive approaches like gender in development, GAID, and women environment and development, WAID, which emphasize broader structural changes. And here I am going to conclude this lecture that the WID approach is very important, and this question is often asked in provincial and federal level exams like CSS and PMS.